Thanks for joining us, and welcome once again to Service Matters. And on Service Matters, a weekly radio show that we like to talk about the good things that are happening in local communities and beyond. We also like to talk about those individuals, maybe organizations, and maybe businesses out there like banks that do the best they can to make dreams real for many folks out there that may possibly be in need. You're listening to WPRO, the voice of Southern New England. You can hear us on AM 630 or FM 99.7. We are indeed a Cumulus station. I'm Dave Clifton. I'm happy to be hosting the show. My co-host, Val Perry, is taking some time off during the long Independence Day celebration. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But I did want to introduce our special guest that joins us today. I know him from being a longtime employee with the town of Sharon for a number of years in the Parks and Recreation Department. And this fellow was a young guy growing up, participating in all the youth sports and high school activities. And guess what? Today he happens to be the CEO and president of the Sharon Credit Union. Wow. And of course, they have about 25 branches. My guest today is a graduate of Harvard University. He got his MBA at the Northeastern University in Boston. Notice I said MBA, not NBA, because I know he loves basketball and likes to talk about the Celtics. But welcome to WPRO, Glenn Parsons, who lives in Westwood, Massachusetts, but a longtime Sharon resident. Congratulations. I know it's been a while since you have been the lead person at the Sharon Credit Union, and well-deserved, a guy who's very professional.
Well, very nice to be here, and I appreciate the kind comments. I really do.
And I wanted to talk a little bit today, Glenn, about the importance of community service, but I'm going to put that off because I want to talk about you growing up in the town of Sharon. It's interesting. They're in Norfolk County. We today are in Bristol County. And of course, our WPRO radio show is being televised by ECAT, Eastern Community Access Television. And they enjoy doing it, and we enjoy being televised because today, Glenn Parsons, we not only have a listening audience, but we also have a viewing audience, and we're able to share some of our conversation with the folks out there. How do we do it, folks? Well, we tape it today, we put on the radio tomorrow, and we also share it with other, I should say, cable TV stations, community outreach, and we get a lot of mileage out of what we talk about. And I know that someone asked me one day, how many people listen to your show? And I say, look, the 2 or 3 people listening enjoy the show. That's the important thing. But I hope there's a lot more listening because the radio reach goes to Connecticut, the entire state of Rhode Island, and of course, Massachusetts. And we get lots of people that watch community television. But Glenn, what was it like growing up in Sharon, Massachusetts?
Well, it was a pleasure. Any way you cut it. I went to kindergarten up at School Street and elementary school at Cottage Street, and went to 5th and 6th grade in Pleasant Street, and the junior high school, now the middle school, was brand new at the time. Went to 7th, 8th grade there, and of course high school at the old high school now, the demolished high school, I guess it is. But it was a wonderful place to grow up. I had the pleasure of participating in all the youth sports, all the youth activities. I remember Ames Street Playground, and actually the 4th of July was a big deal. We had parades then, and we had races and activities. There were bonfires up at Sacred Heart, now Deborah Sansom Field, of course. Had the pleasure of, you actually were technically my first boss along the way. Started out as a gate guard at the lake, and became lifeguard and so on and so forth.
We had some interesting lifeguards and gate guards over the years. I should say Congressman Bill Keating used to work at the waterfront. He says today that it's the best job he had. And of course, he's had lots of jobs. He's been a state rep, he's been a state senator. And it was difficult to have someone like him at the main gate because he knew everybody and very popular. He had to say no to some people that had to turn around. But he, because they didn't have their stickers. But the select board members, the current chief of police, Mr. Coffey worked as a gate guard. And of course, the current state representative represents Sharon and Stoughton. He has worked as a waterfront supervisor. And it's just interesting how they all grew up and went on to bigger and better jobs. And I'm thrilled about it myself. But I wanted to say to you that the Sharon Credit Union has been absolutely terrific in terms of community service and giving to lots of programs over the years. And I know that personally because I was in the asking position of, as the town director, trying to get financial support for lots of programs. And I used to work together with a familiar name that you're aware of, and his name is Glenn Parsons. And your dad was absolutely terrific. He worked, I think, at John Hancock. I think at the time they were running the Boston Marathon. And he was absolutely terrific, very professional. And you picked up where he left off after his retirement. So Glenn Parsons, your dad, if he's listening, I thank you so much for your service over the years. You are one special guy, no doubt about it. And it's coming from me, and I know your son realizes that. But growing up...
Thank you for your kind words for him, too.
And I think that he would appreciate it. And it was unbelievable. I don't think the credit union ever said no for anything I've asked for. Of course, it's easy, Glenn, to ask when it's not for yourself. It's for the town programs. So I guess I never made a lot of deposits, but I made lots of withdrawals to help support many events.
That's okay, too.
Yeah. And I know that you did some coaching in youth sports programs in your community now where you live, Westwood, Mass.
Absolutely. In fact, when my children were just starting out into the program, I came back to Sharon, and you were running at that time a program for kindergartners, introducing our first graders, I forgot now, introducing them to basketball. And you and I worked that for a while, and really what I was doing was taking all those good ideas and bringing them back to Westwood. And we employed a lot of what we did.
Well, it's important, I think, in youth sports programs. Sometimes in some towns or cities, it becomes win at all cost. And in the youth programs, especially at the first and second grade level, it shouldn't be about winning. It's about learning, teaching young kids how to get along with each other. They all get treated the same. They all get rewarded the same. Instead of having a second grader go on to another town and compete for a huge trophy, to me doesn't make sense, with parents running up and down screaming at each other. So we had a lot of fun. Every kid got an ice cream after practice, and every kid had an opportunity to participate instead of some young second grader sitting on a bench wondering why he or she wasn't playing. So I think we had the right formula, and they get plenty of time going through school to participate in sports. And when you get to the high school level or the college level, it becomes much more competitive. And some are fortunate enough to get the opportunity to play at the professional area. And I remember telling some parents that not too many people make the pros. Not too many people make the college team. Certainly not everybody can play high school ball. So why not have fun while you can and make sure that everybody enjoys the program? that's been our philosophy, and I'm glad that you brought it over to Westwood, Mass, to get them thinking the same way. And then all of a sudden, you get this big-time job as the president and CEO, and I was impressed when I saw you on Channel 5. You had prime time, and you had an ad promoting the Sharon Credit Union, and there you were, just before the playoffs.
We were fortunate.
How did you ever get that spot? That was terrific.
We were very fortunate that the Celtics went that far, put us in prime time, and actually we were on some of the Bruins playoff games as well, and continue on some of the Red Sox games now.
Isn't it interesting to see that the Celtics just picked up someone that's 7'3"?
Amazing.
Wow. Can you imagine being 7'3"? If he gets any taller, he can just hang on the rim. But I think it's going to help them out in terms of the future. Now, being involved with a board at the credit union, you folks probably have a mission, and that mission, of course, is to do what you can to help the community out. And you must spend a lot of time at meetings deciding how your resources can help a community out, and you probably get lots of requests. Is that an important part of running the credit union?
No, absolutely. One of the things that make credit unions different is that community piece to it. We are, some people don't realize it, but we're a nonprofit organization, and therefore we're owned by our members. So if you're a customer of the credit union, you're called a member, and you're a part owner of the credit union. So as such, we don't answer to shareholders in the traditional sense. We do have a board of directors, but it's a different mission. It really is to enhance the economic well-being of our members and the communities that we serve. So not only do we think it's a good idea, it's we're really obligated to make sure that we do what we can for communities, and we do spend a great deal of time. We get a lot of requests, as you would guess, along the way. We spend a great deal of time vetting who we give money to and who we don't. Some of the criteria we tend to lean toward is, of course, if it's in our footprint, largely in our footprint, which is basically from, let's say, 128 to 495, Route 24 and Route 95. That's really our sweet spot in there. So if it's a concern that's in that area, it gets a close look. We tend to give preference to programs that involve children of all sorts, whether it's healthy children or, unfortunately, some that aren't as healthy. We try to do a lot of things for disadvantaged folks along the way.
Interesting how the town of Sharon is a very diversified community. And of course, you have about 162 employees with 12 branches scattered around Norfolk County, I think, and maybe it goes even further.
It does.
And it's something that the corporate office is now in Brockton, or was it in Sharon?
It's we went through a merger. We're actually technically now Sharon Crescent United. That's SCU. So we still have the Sharon facility that as an operations center. My office is technically in Brockton now, on Belmont Street. So
good enough. We're going to have to take a short break, Glenn, to hear from our sponsors. But I did want to give a shout out and a thank you to the Navigant Credit Union. They're in Rhode Island, and here my guest is from the Sharon Credit Union. They cover Massachusetts. We are forever grateful to the Navigant Credit Union. They have 23 plus branches scattered throughout the Ocean State. They are the sponsor of this show. We call it Service Matters. And of course, WPRO, the voice of Southern New England. We'll be right back after these important messages.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of For the Love of Words. After a 3-year hiatus, join me, John Holgerson, and
Priscilla Almquist Olson,
as we interview poets and musicians.
Could you give the audience a little summary of your background as a child?
When I turned 7 or so, we were car bombed. That stuck out.
And have them share their love of words.
Sometimes I wonder, do you ever think of me?
A thin broth of moonlight caught in the trees spreads across the garden brush, so one side of every stick shimmers while the other sides melt into one another, a mass grave of cherry, pear, and pine.
For the Love of Words at 7 p.m. on Thursdays.
There's a storm.
Join me, Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, to explore the town of Easton and its interesting, engaging, ordinary, and extraordinary people, and meet a smorgasbord of guests, including artists, authors, musicians, business owners, community organizations, clergy, local leaders, etc., etc., etc. Community Forum at 3 p.m. on Thursdays and 1:30 p.m. on Saturdays. See you then.
Welcome back to Service Matters. I'm Dave Clifton, and my co-host Val Perry is out planning and preparing with her family the Independence Day celebration. This is a long weekend for lots of folks out there that get an opportunity to participate. And I know we got fireworks going on in many different towns, and people are always asking what's happening in Rhode Island. And of course, the city of Providence, they have a big display going on July 3rd. That'll be at India Point Park. The fireworks go off at 9 p.m. But they're also scattered in many towns and cities. A big parade in Bristol, Rhode Island, which is the oldest and probably the largest parade in the country. And I say that in the country, that's a big time parade. And I've been to the parade a couple of times, Glenn, and I ended up with a headache for sitting for 8 hours just watching the parade go by. I think everybody in the town was in the parade, and they bring in many, many bands and floats, and it was truly amazing how they draw people from everywhere. And I know the Sharon Credit Union is started in Sharon, Mass, and of course they have expanded, but Sharon, Massachusetts has their fireworks display over that beautiful Lake Massapog, 353 acres. They go off on July 3rd, not the 4th, it will be July 3rd. And what scenery, sitting by a lake watching the fireworks go off, and of course 353 acres. But there are many other towns. Walpole has fireworks. You have a credit union in Walpole as well as Foxborough. But fireworks certainly take place in many towns and cities. We ask everyone out there to be safe, be cautious. We ask the young people not to be shooting off fireworks where people are, because it could be detrimental to their health, and injuries take place. So I think enjoy the holiday weekend with parades and all the activities that take place. There'll be road races. And I actually drove a road race once, and a person that was running beat me, and I drove the whole route. Of course, I'm being facetious. My guest today is Glenn Parsons. He's the CEO and president of the Sharon Credit Union that has 12 branches scattered around Massachusetts. And what have you got to say about Jim Carlson? He's the guy that you replaced in that position. He was there over 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, he was there longer than 20 years. He started out, his dad, Bob Carlson, ran the credit union initially, following the Van Leers, going way back. But Jim started, I think he was emptying trash in the beginning. He worked as a teller. He really worked his way up and had a wonderful career. The credit union grew significantly during that period. We went from one branch to 5 branches, and the number of assets grew significantly during that same period. And he was very instrumental and saw us through the merger with Crescent. And he's subsequently retired, and his passion has been hunting and fishing and farming, and he's moved to West Virginia, where he has a large estate where he farms and he hunts and he fishes.
Wow. He used to live across the street from me when I was in Sharon. It was interesting to see how he and his wife were out in our backyard, and then one day he's the president of the credit union. I did want to ask you, and I know that your dad has been an inspiration to you. Are there some things that you can say about your dad that you'll always remember? Some things that he taught you in the day-to-day living in a community like Sharon, Massachusetts. What can you say about your dad, Glenn?
Well, I have to say that I was very fortunate growing up in the community like Sharon. You know, my parents were very supportive, both my dad and my mom in different ways. It was a very diverse community. Education is very important in the community, in Sharon community, and my parents very much supported that end. On the fun front, if you will, athletics and such, my dad was a big driver, very competitive. He taught me about competition and how to compete. His passion of all the sports was basketball, and I think some of that rubbed off on me along the way for sure.
I always remember him bringing a camera to a lot of the games. He always took a picture of everything. And he probably has 100 pictures of me. I don't want them all back, just 50 of them. But the fact is that he was an inspiration not only to you, Glenn, but to other young people. He served on the Recreation Advisory Committee for many years, and he was articulate when he spoke. It was always in a positive way. And that's what we do with this show called Service Matters. We talk only about the good things that are happening out there in local communities. And folks out there that are watching or maybe listening, the world's gotten a little crazy with some of the things that are happening, and I think we got to do what we can to make it positive. And the Navicant Credit Union, they jump in and want to sponsor the show and have for, we've been doing the show for 12 years. And they like the idea of the show because we talk about good things. And I sometimes wonder who's listening out there, and then I'll run into someone in an event and they said, aren't you doing that positive show that talks about good things? He said, I love it. Keep it going. We need to hear more about those things. And I'm talking about the firefighter who saved the life of a young child and the mother by going in and putting his life at stake. And I think about this guy standing in front of me, Glenn, at Shaw's Supermarket. I'm over there shopping for my wife, and the woman in front of him had 2 carriages, and she had 3 kids with her, and he had said to her, how many children do you have? And she said 5. And she was searching around in her pocketbook. She couldn't find her wallet. And after a while, the guy in front of me, who had a suit and tie on just like you have today, he said, ma'am, why don't you forget about your wallet and let me take care of this? She said, no. She said, I feel embarrassed. He said, I'm happy to do it. He wanted to do something good. He said, I'm going to feel good about doing this. You got 5 children. I'm happy to do it. He paid her bill. And I think that's absolutely terrific, something good. And before we take another break, I did want to mention this woman who told her son, I can't help you with college this year. I know you just graduated from high school. We're going to have to take care of this later. That night she won the lottery. He went to college. What a nice ending.
Yeah.
I'm Dave Clifton here along with my guest Glenn Parsons. We're talking about good things that are happening. We're being covered by the television cameras here at ECAT, Eastern Community Access Television. They're going to share it with other cable companies in other towns. You're listening to WPRO. Hurry back.
In 2023, Easton is a tight-knit community of 25,000 people. But with the hustle and bustle of modern life, it's easy to forget our past. A time when Easton's population was 6,000.
Everybody knew who everybody
everybody
was.
And there was respect.
There was respect for everyone.
When kids enjoyed great freedom and independence.
Everybody was poor at today's standards, but we all were in the same boat and we enjoyed life.
So join me, Priscilla Almquist Olsen, as I explore what makes Easton so very special with some of its lifetime residents.
I think Easton has so much to offer, and if you're living in a community, you have to know it.
Watch Growing Up in Easton Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and Friday at 9 p.m. See you then.
Welcome back to another segment of Service Matters. Yes, we like to talk about the good things that are happening out there in local communities. And if you've got something good that you'd like to share, or maybe you'd like to pat someone on the back, give us a call at WPRO, because we would like to be able to share that story and thank that local police officer or a firefighter or maybe a lifeguard who saved a life. I think that's important to let people know that there are good things happening out there. And it gets to the point sometimes where I may be watching the news and I decide to shut it off because everything is, it's tough to listen to. But I did want to ask you, Glenn, like all credit unions, you have a board of directors and they give their time to serve on that board. Maybe you could recognize some of the people that give their time to work closely with you.
Sure, absolutely. Some people don't realize that credit unions have boards of directors. We, of course, do. As a result of the merger between Sharon and Crescent, we ended up with, we ended up initially with more directors than we have today. But today we have 14 directors, some from each of the two institutions that merged. You mentioned Bill Keating earlier. He is on our board of directors, has been for quite some time. I joined the board quite some time ago, 30 years ago or so, and most recently was chairman of the board before I took over in this position. I mention that because I had the opportunity to get to know the board members quite well. During the merger, it was important to have everyone get to meet each other, and of course COVID hit right when the merger took place, so it was a bit challenging. But we've got a great board with a diverse perspectives, very successful business people and some public sector folks, all of whom have exceeded in their given fields. Chairman of our board is Howard Spiller. He was formerly a Crescent board member. He's an accountant, so we've got a handful of accountants on the board, as well as lawyers and business people.
And of course, that name Dudley Davenport rings a bell. He used to be the athletic director at Sharon High School, the late Dudley Davenport. And they're going to be renaming the gymnasium when the students get back to school and basketball season arrives. And you asked me to MC that event. I'm looking forward to it. Dudley, of course, a longtime successful basketball coach, athletic director. His wife, Shirley Davenport, was the town clerk for the town of Sharon. And another name that seems to ring a bell, and that's Joe Peckham. They're going to name the baseball field. Of course, Sharon has a brand new high school that the students got into this year, but they're now finishing the tennis courts and and the fields. And of course, we're looking forward to it. And I know that Joe Peckham and Dudley Davenport will always be remembered in the town of Sharon for the good things they've done for the young people and as teachers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of having lots of contact with them younger. Joel initially through Pop Warner football, actually. In the early days, my father was helping Jack Cosgrove, Joel Peckham, and Lou Kafka, another name from back then, really get football established in town. And Joel was great. Dudley, I could spend hours talking about Dudley.
Yeah. He was a very successful basketball coach, and I know that he went into the Hall of Fame in Sharon. I had the honor of also being added to that Hall of Fame as an announcer, and I remember the year they went all the way to the finals to win the state championship. Dudley was the athletic director then, but not the coach. But he's been at the old Garden, the old Boston Garden, many times, bringing teams in there. Somehow they always found a way to win. And Sharon did well in basketball. They did well in tennis. And they certainly did well with the grades and the students being educated. And it wasn't too long ago, Glenn, that you must be familiar with that Money Magazine decided that Sharon, Massachusetts was the #1 small community in America to live in. And the question that would come up is why? It was because of their diversity. It was because of their educational system, the feeling about public safety, it being a safe community, and open space, and of course, I don't want to leave out recreation. Families enjoyed living there because they had a wide variety of activities, and they also had some outstanding teachers that were in that school. And you're an example of that. Not everybody can go to Harvard University, and that must have been a thrill for you to be accepted there and to learn and study there. Anything you got to say about Harvard?
Well, I was very fortunate, and clearly could not have made it there had it not been for the Sharon public school system. And a lot of folks there, a lot of classmates were private school folks. Some were public school, and I'm quite proud to be a public school Sharon High graduate.
Yeah. And we should say out there, a lot of the communities, whether it be in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, or Connecticut, the town government can't do everything. They have to count on other people to help with financing different programs and activities. And I think the same thing with volunteers. How important it is to give back to a community that you grew up in. And I know of lots of volunteers, and we had hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. We couldn't do it alone without all the volunteers. Can you imagine just to run a parade, it was, 40 people. You can't do activities unless you have lots of volunteers. You can't even run a youth sports program. It takes 1,000 people in a youth soccer program just to make sure the kids have the guidance and the instruction. I have a lot of fun talking about youth sports, and I have a lot of fun talking about senior adults having an opportunity to enjoy their life as they retire, and having activities. There were some days when I had more senior citizens participating in activities or going on bus trips and stuff than the kids, because they too wanted to enjoy life. And when I take a look at the population in Sharon, where I lived and worked for 40 years, how it's changed. And I want to sit down and cry when I go to the cemetery and I see all of the people that I sort of grew up with that were all in my programs and no longer here. And that's what happens. Time flies by quickly. And What about your young people? How old are they now?
My children? My son is 29 and my daughter is 27.
Wow.
And time flies, for sure. But so they're out, gainfully employed, all good things. So.
And I know that the Morganelli family is another family that you certainly are very close to. You married a Morganelli.
I did. Indeed, I did. Another Sharon person, another Sharon family, Nancy Morganelli.
Certainly give her my regards, Glenn.
I certainly shall. Soon enough, very soon, actually.
And I know that I remember the home that you lived in growing up as a kid. And I think I know the guy who moved into your home. Wasn't he a reporter for WBZ?
That's right.
Yeah.
Ron Sanders?
Ron Sanders.
Yeah.
He was absolutely terrific. I've had him on the air a few times, and we've emceed, I think, Sharon's 250th anniversary celebration, which wasn't too long ago. We're going to take another short break. I'm Dave Clifton. I'm here at the ECAT studios. That's Eastern Community Access Television. They are televising our radio show on WPRO that we will share with all of our listeners as well as our viewers. Stay with us, folks. We're talking about good things that happen in local communities.
Hello, welcome to Easton News. I'm Abby Kitchenham.
And I'm Jack Ryan, and together we bring you everything you need to know about Easton, including politics.
The annual town election is scheduled for Saturday, April 22nd, 2023.
Community events.
Be inspired. Counseling presents a parent and child coping workshop centered around a new year and new beginnings.
And sports.
Pressure builds diamonds, so we live by that every day at practice, going into every game.
With APCSM guest segment Pet of the Week.
Hi, I'm Katie with the Animal Protection Center, and today we have a little Iris.
With help from special correspondent Wyatt Fain. Join us
for Easton News.
Playing 6 o'clock, Friday, Saturday, and Sundays.
Don't have time to sit down and watch ECAT programs? Don't worry, ECAT has got you covered. That's right, ECAT has
podcasts!
ECAT Podcast Channel has your favorite shows that you could listen to. Whether you want to chill and listen to the Ron Van Dam Show and hear him talk about what's bothering him that day, or the show hosted by local legends Stephanie Weinstein and Meredith Keach, where they talk about anything and everything, or take a listen to the weekly news hosted by Jack Ryan and Abby Kitchenham. Stay tuned in with Tiger Talk hosted by Oliver Ames students. Community Forum is where their host Priscilla talks about all things Easton. Easton residents can also find government meetings about various topics. You can find the podcast on Podbean and all your favorite podcast platforms. Just by searching ECAT or the ECAT podcast, you can find it all. The ECAT podcast channel is powered by Podbean, so either in the car ride or walking around town, you can always catch what's going on with ECAT. Happy listening!
Welcome back to the final segment of Service Matters. Again, we're talking about good things that happen in local communities and beyond. And we say to people out there, regardless of where you're from, that you can always call us anytime and let us know something that's happened in your community that you'd like to share and have us put on the air. Or maybe there's someone that you would like to have come to our studio and join us on the air so that we can pat them on the back and thank them. Because the message that goes out to other people is, that sounds pretty good to do some good things out there in the local community. And and you see it every day out there if you look for it. If you don't look for it, you don't see it. I walk down the street and I see a kid, all of a sudden a teenager, come up and say to the senior adult, ma'am, can I carry that bag for you? He walked her across the street, carried her bundle. There are many people out there that wouldn't believe that a teenager would stop doing what they're doing to do that. And I said to myself, I wish I could pat his parents on the back because of what he did. And he's doing it because he wanted to do it. And I thought that was absolutely terrific. And I know that, Glenn, you wanted to talk about some good things that the credit union does to to share the goodwill in the local community. And you had something you want to mention about shopping.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we mentioned before, we do try to give back to the community in different ways. And for instance, HESCO, some of our employees in Sharon have volunteered for that, and they help with the delivering meals, that sort of thing. There's a long list of activities, but one in particular that was particularly moving for me was not long after I became president at SCU, there was a day actually called World Kindness Day. Perhaps you know about that.
Yes.
Okay, so we decided that we wanted to do something for World Kindness Day. So I went to 5 different supermarkets in the area. Doesn't matter which ones, but 5 different ones, and I bought a gift certificate for $150. And then I walked around the supermarket and tried to find somebody who I thought could use it. And that's a whole interesting story too, how you actually pick people out. But in keeping with the basic theme of children, usually made sure there was a woman with a small child, and gave them the gift certificate. Got all sorts of reactions. One woman,
wow,
literally said, "Are you serious?" And she said, "I didn't know how I was going to make my rent payment this month, and with Thanksgiving upcoming, you just made Thanksgiving for us." Another woman burst into tears. Extremely moving. And even though I was part of the credit union movement for a long time, seeing it firsthand really struck me. And perhaps the most amazing one to me was I realized that I had been selecting, I said 5 gift certificates in 5 different places. So there's 25 in all. And they were mostly women with children. And I realized I should become a little more diverse and find maybe an elderly person. So found a gentleman who was in one of the machines that you drive. Had a hat on and approached him, and I said, "I'd like to give this to you." And he said, I don't deserve it. I said, "Why?" He said, "Well," he says, "because I still work." He says, "I'm 73 years old, and I drive people to the doctor."
Wow.
And he said, "During COVID, I couldn't take the money because I needed to work because people had to go, to the doctor." So he said, "I don't deserve it." Of course, he deserved it probably more than anybody. So, but it was a very moving
story.
Very moving day.
Yeah. Well, you know where you can find me. I wasn't looking for a check, but maybe there's a possibility you might come up with an idea that I could help participate and see that happen with a microphone in my hand to find someone. I thought that's a terrific idea. Wow. And I think as you folks out there that are watching and listening, you can do good things. I always think about going to Dunkin' Donuts and being in the drive-in window. And I go up to pay for my coffee and the woman waiting on me says, "The guy in front paid for your coffee." I said, "Really?" I would order a couple of sandwiches if I'd known that. The fact is that he didn't know me, I didn't know him, but he just felt like doing something good, and he paid for my coffee. So I said, well, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I said, I'm going to take care of the car behind me. Do you happen to know what their tariff is? Right. And when I looked in the rearview mirror, there must have been 5 or 6 people in that car. And I said, I picked the wrong car.
Next time, right?
The fact is, I did take care of it. I was happy to do it. And something like that can mushroom, and people see someone else doing something. How many people do you see hold a car door open for their wife or significant other? Those are things that I've seen years ago.
Mm-hmm.
My dad used to do it for my mother. And it's amazing how if you get an opportunity to work with, I call them senior adults. Some people say old people, some people. Well, when you reach a certain age yourself, you start understanding adult senior, or senior adult sounds a little better than the old person next door type thing. So it's so important for people to reword sometimes what they say. I'd like to give a shout out and a thank you to Brett Ferruccio, our producer back at the studio. He's the guy that pushes the buttons. Adam Carrero, we thank you for your participation here as the producer of this TV show. And we hope that we can get some mileage out of the show because it does talk about the good things. You working in Sharon, I know that your office is in Brockton.
I split time, about 50-50.
And one of my relatives said to me, he married my daughter, and of course he was over in Brockton, and he saw this guy running around introducing himself and shaking hands with people. And he said it turned out it was the president and CEO of the Sharon Credit Union. And I said, oh, who was that? And he said, Glenn. He said, I don't know why. He said, my wife has an account in this credit union, and the last name is Clifton. And you picked up on that right off the bat. So lots of good history that goes with the community that we grew up in, Glenn. And this is a little different show, a little different twist that we've done today. I guess we're getting to the close of our show. And that music that you hear in the background, What a Wonderful World. Thank you, Louis Armstrong. What a wonderful world it can be if everybody steps up and does the best they can. I'm Dave Clifton, bidding you farewell from the studios here in Easton, Massachusetts. A big thank you to my guest, Glenn Parsons. Glenn, we appreciate you being here today and talking about the good things that your job gets you involved in. We say to folks out there, if you're listening, go forth to serve. Do it with a smile on your face. And if you're going to do something good to help someone out, certainly do it with the dignity that it deserves. Have a terrific long holiday weekend. Enjoy each other and do what you can to help someone out. Amen.